Thank you. Now this is your opportunity to ask both of the councillors questions. You can address them to both or to one. So would you like to come back up again, Tony and Lou? So, are there any questions? We have microphones around the room.
Thank you. My question is about the Tewantin Bypass Road. On the council before amalgamation, that road was designed and was a high priority. I've spoken to our state member just before the state election. He said he couldn't do anything about it because it did not have any priority whatsoever on the Sunshine Coast Regional Council. I want to hear from the two candidates, what are they going to do about the Tewantin Bypass Road? Will it be given a priority in the next term?
Hi June, how are you going? It is a priority in my mind. I've had long conversations with Glen Elms about this. Glen Elms doesn't need it, in my mind, to be a priority of councils. He needs it to be a priority of the state. And I'll be working very hard to convince Glenn that this is a high priority for us, and particularly now that he's in government and has some significant power as a minister, and that the state government steps up to their responsibility to dual lane Beckmans Road. It's their responsibility, you know that, the plans are done, it needs funding, and it needs to be a priority of Glen Elms. And I'll be very quickly into his office as soon as I can to remind him of that. Thank you. And I remind you too, June, as you know, that we tried for many, many years, you and Frank Pardon in particular, worked seriously hard at getting the Butler Street bypass through, which we've delivered in the last 4 years. So I mean business. When there's a road needed, I'm very keen to make it happen. Thank you.
Just in case anyone's a bit confused about this, what June's talking about is the Beckmans Road that runs between the Koroi-Noosa Road and the Yamundi-Noosa Road. And as anyone who tries to travel on it during peak hour, particularly during school times, will know, it clogs up. And there's long been a plan to put in a parallel road so it becomes dual carriageway. Curiously enough, the state government did start to do work on it and then stopped because they decided to cease funding on that road. We now have a new state government. Obviously that means a new opportunity. Quite plainly, like Lou, if I'm in, then I'll be working as hard as I can to see that come to fruition.
Sir, could you come over to this gentleman?
Thank you. I'd address this to both candidates. My name's Hugh McGarry and I live in Division 12. I'm actually in an industry which, and I'm in business, I work for myself as a consultant. I arrived here 3.5 years ago. Since then I have battled continuously with the major supplier of telecommunication services here to get adequate service in the area where I live, which is Timbirwa and not beyond the Black Stump. Now I have been told, and it was in the press recently, a response from Countrywide, that they're waiting for the national broadband network. For instance, this supplier, who will remain nameless, has said they have congestion, they have no plans to fix it. It impacts my business and other people.
So ask the question.
What would the candidates, or do they have any awareness of the impact of information technology or the lack of broadband services in this region? And what would they intend to do about it, particularly since the national broadband network has been delayed for a further 3 years in reaching this part of the Sunshine Coast? Thank you.
And thank you for your question, and thank you for your passion, and I understand your frustration. I do understand it. I understand that information technology is the future for our region to a large degree in an economic sense. And to show how committed I am, I approached the federal government some years ago when they were first rolling out the fibre optic through the railway corridor to give us access at Koroi. And after some significant toing and froing, we were the first community in Australia to roll out fibre optic, and it was in Koroi, because I understand what a great asset it is. Now we have a data centre up there. The data centre backhauls information from Brisbane and Gold Coast and is expanding. There are about 35 people employed to manage the data centre and other businesses. They're off-site, they're in Noosaville. We've got some issues about accessing the fibre optic throughout that Karori district because of pricing, but at the same time, when that was delivered, that company that you're talking about reduced its prices, it extended its contracts, and it put new products on the table knowing that we're coming. That fibre optic distributed through Karori also puts us in a good position going forward with NBN, because NBN have made the statement that they're going to the lowest hanging fruit first to deliver NBN. We've negotiated very hard over the last 2 years to see that we get on the register for NBN, which we weren't before. We now have a commitment to Nambour and Maroochy, and from there we'll be working very hard to see that NBN comes to those other places like Karori, Mooloolaba, and other places where the fibre optic has been rolled out. I'm very serious, I'm very committed. We've got some achievements there. We need to do more, and we're working on it daily. Thank you.
Look, I appreciate that modern business requires modern technology, and that internet services, high-speed internet services, are essential for the effective operation of business. And it's always going to be a bit of a problem in rural areas, but obviously we need to work with all the authorities to facilitate that. Seeing as Lou brought it up, let's talk about the Karori Data Centre. Last September it was the subject of a headline in the Noosa Journal, which pointed out that 3 years after going online, not a single resident in Karori was connected to it because no one could afford it. Council's own press release when it was being set up, at the cost, I might add, of hundreds of thousands of dollars to ratepayers, said that it would feed into the Karori Library. I've had discussions with Karori Library. They have their own internet service. They spurn the Karori Data Centre. A senior council officer in charge of information technology has said people in Karori would be better off waiting for the NBN rollout. So it's great that it's there. It's terrific. I wish it worked.
Gentleman with his hand up. I'm not sure where the microphone is. Is Sue there with the microphone? And that person next, Sue.
My question is a general question to both Tony and Lou, and also it's a general question to the mayoral candidates as well. I want to ask, do you know about the helicopter school that's operating out of Sunshine Coast, training Saudi Arabian pilots and buzzing Noosa regularly? And if you do know about it, what are your thoughts and policies on whether you're going to actually work towards having that return to a national park, or try to develop that as a growing industry and annoy the Noosa residents further?
Some people here will probably know that I've been campaigning on this issue long before I decided to stand for council. The history of the Noosa North Shore landing ground is that it's an old World War II relic. In 1991, the Fitzgerald inquiry into the Great Sandy region recommended it be transferred into National Park. In 1992, that became state government policy. Subsequently, it became Noosa Council policy, and it remains the Sunshine Coast Council policy to have that landing area transferred into National Park. You're quite right. The helicopter use of it at the moment is for training overseas pilots. It's not training rescue pilots in Australia, as has been suggested in the papers. It's an interesting point, isn't it? Lou sits on the Noosa North Shore Working Group that approves the use of the landing ground for this. And there's supposed to be a management plan that allows for 104 helicopter movements per week, but there is no one, I guarantee you, no one is monitoring that. And indeed, the General Manager of the Sunshine Coast Airport said recently to the Noosa North Shore Working Group, there's no need to change anything because it's not impacting on anyone. I had a woman on the phone only last week from Noosa Banks in tears over this matter because she moved there, she spent a lot of money on a house, she doesn't believe she can afford to sell, and she's absolutely fed up. I think it's about time that both the state government and local council got together and fulfilled their existing commitment to have the Noosa North Shore landing ground transferred into National Park. Thank you.
We have to be careful of misinformation, and it's very difficult to get the messages out clearly, it seems, these days. Despite what's been told, Noosa Council has identified that if the land is transferred across, and this is from many years ago, this is not recent, if the land was transferred across the national park, the airstrip would remain. I didn't write that policy, it's existing. If we want to change it, we can change it. You also need to be very aware of the fact that not all these helicopters are of our making, or their destination and their starting point is not within the bounds of the Sunshine Coast Council. Yesterday I had a complaint from a lady who was here at the polling booth. I investigated the complaint with our manager of airports. The helicopter was indeed Australian Armed Forces training, and we have no control over that. It spent 4 hours going from another destination to the North Shore airstrip and hovering and training and practicing and lifting and dropping and all of those things. Annoying the heck out of the people on the North Shore, we have no control over that. There are a lot of other helicopters that use that North Shore and use Sunshine Beach as a flight path that we have no control over. They don't start with us, they don't land with us, we have no control. So there's a lot of stuff out there about what Sunshine Coast Council is responsible for, but I'd ask that you do your homework first. Now, I'm very serious about the increase in traffic on the North Shore that we do have control over. I'm in constant contact with the manager of airports. He's in contact with those who do operate out of the Maroochy and Caloundra Airport, and we're doing whatever we can to monitor their numbers and to make sure that there isn't growth. If it doesn't stop, if the growth does come from the Sunshine Coast Council airports, I'll be doing everything I can to see that it does stop. That's my commitment. I've told the manager of airports, but I just need you to be aware there's a lot of stuff out there that is not accurate. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to an end of questions for the councillors. We have a tight schedule, and so I'd like to thank both Tony Wellington and Lou Brennan. Unfortunately for